Hello everyone, I am the Lore Explorer, and this is Outer Wilds, Echoes of the Eye, the first official word from the highly anticipated Outer Wilds DLC. First and foremost, before we get into anything spoilery for the DLC, I'm excited to state that the DLC will be released on September 28th of this year. And yesterday, we saw a bit about what is going to be in that release, and I'm looking forward to talking about it with everyone. So, as always, this video will contain spoilers for Outer Wilds, Echoes of the Eye. Now, this isn't in the trailer, but an article written by the developer, Alex Beecham, reveals that the DLC is essentially a new location in the Outer Wilds solar system. It's meant to be like this location has always been there, and it's meant to have been a recent discovery for the Outer Wilds ventures. He says this new DLC is supposed to weave into the existing world and narrative already told by Outer Wilds, so it sounds like the majority of the game won't change a bit. They're just going to add a new planet and change the story up a tiny bit to allow for that. But with all of that said, let's get to the trailer and break it down. The first shot we see is a close-up of an Outer Wild Ventures satellite, which is pretty interesting to see. This satellite is out in deep space, equipped with screens, a camera pointing at the sun, and 2 radar dishes sticking out at the side, plus a little solar panel sticking up. We have never seen Hearthian technology like this before. But, just as we start drifting away from the satellite, we see something very odd begin to happen with the sun. It seems to be getting eclipsed by a huge object. But the weird thing is, we can't see this object before or after it gets in front of the sun. For some reason, it only blocks out our sun. It doesn't block out the planets that it should be in front of. It doesn't block out the other stars in the universe. For some reason, this mysterious object only eclipses the sun, and it just shows up. Now, the Steam listing for Echoes of the Eye talks about a satellite photo of an anomaly that the Outer Wild Adventurers can't attribute to any known location in the solar system. My guess is we just witnessed that photo being taken during the opening scene, and they've added a new exhibit to the museum to tell us about it. That's how they're going to add it to the world. Our boy Chert must have gotten to work because the new exhibit is a picture of the projected orbit of this anomaly and a picture of a brand new tower on Timber Hearth. This is actually the same tower we saw during the leak of the DLC back in April. It's just from a different angle in which we see a small building as well. I'm thinking that this is where the Hearthians have been searching for or tracking this anomaly. The Hearthians might have noticed some effects of a large body being close to the system, because they set up the satellite and camera to film it before it passes the sun. This sort of suggests that they had prior knowledge that this object was coming into the system, or else they would have never been able to get a camera out there to look at it to begin with. I'm betting that this tower was built to try to search for this giant invisible body, just like the Nomai built the quantum moon locator or something like that. I'm excited to find out more about this eclipsing object, but now we get to see some new footage of what seems to be this new location. The first scene in the trailer shows us a place that's kind of unfamiliar to us. Actually, well, it's a little bit familiar to us since this is the same image that we saw in like the leak and teaser back in April. A new symbol for the eye. Now, we know more about this location now, and how it's meant to be woven into the game, so it seems like we have a new planet or location to explore with more runes from a new species, and apparently, they knew about the eye too. This is probably just a symbol that they came up with for the eye. Next up was a pretty plain scene of us going down a pathway in a cavern. This may be why the majority of the scenes in the trailer were dark. It seems a lot of these locations in the trailer may be deep underground inside these caves, but that's just a guess. Next up, we see a little scout getting shot into a room to light it up. It reveals to be what's a mostly empty storage room, but on the wall, we can see 2 strange objects. They seem like 2 wearable symbols or devices, but I have no idea what they would be meant to do. We will just have to wait until September 28th to figure that out. We see more strange symbols in the next scene as well, but there's a lot to take in here. We find ourselves in a room with a cage in the center. Inside the cage, and built into the top of it, are 3 lights. Below that, in the cage, seems to be a large medallion or symbol of some kind. It looks to be made of metal, but inside are like Built into it, there are 2 round green slots or symbols, and we can see some circles inside of those symbols. It almost looks like an eye, to be honest, but we only get a really good look at one of them. And in this green circle, in the symbol, we see a light at the bottom of the innermost circle, which I just find fascinating. Around the cage, we can see 6 visible boxes with a few stacked up. I'm thinking that maybe this was a freight elevator of some kind, and they'd bring these boxes up or down using a chain and crank. But the medallion in the middle is obviously the most interesting thing here. I'm pretty sure that we see this elevator in a screenshot on the Steam page at the bottom of a tall building as well. I'm betting they are the same elevator, and that's what we're doing, we're lowering it down to this bottom here, but there could be more than one, and I could be wrong there. Up next, we have a really weird scene, and for more than one reason. So, we seem to be in a shallow body of water of some kind, and there are trees all along the shore, and just ahead is a spooky house which we can barely see in the dark. It has some weird, strange lights on the porch, giving off an ominous look. It does look like kind of a nice house though. But the really interesting thing about this scene is instead of the hard cut that we see in every other transition in this video, this transition fades out. Our vision goes dark and it fades out from the top to the bottom, and then in the next scene, it seems like it fades in from the bottom up to the top. So everything sort of seems like it's quantum and you're just walking from one scene to the next. But, I mean, it's just so strange that this is the only scene in the whole entire trailer that doesn't have a hard cut. It fades in, or it fades out, and then the next one fades in, and they seem to go together so well. This totem statue is really interesting though. It has some candles next to it for some reason, and it's definitely carved to be a hand. You can even see like little joints were carved into it, which makes me ask, why the heck did they have the little spiky thing sticking off on the side? Either way, this totem seems pretty important in whatever species lived here. Oh, and the totem, it's definitely shaped like a normal eye, and it kind of looks like a slot that you could plug something into, but maybe that's just me. Now this scene, I think it's pretty interesting. In front of us is a bridge with a sort of church or something across from it, but on the left-hand side, hanging off a cliff, we can see a few collapsed buildings. The roof of one of the buildings looks rotten through, and the side of one of the buildings look busted open. They just look really aged. And as we cross the bridge suddenly breaks apart, and even the buildings on the left-hand side fall off. But I guess we'll have to wait and see what we fall into. Now this is where things start to get really interesting. We find ourselves in a room with spinning walls. On the separate section of the walls, it looks like there's some kind of artwork or symbols that if you line them up, you could see it. But they don't all line up for us to get a good view of whatever it is. And in the middle, there's like these rotating pillars in different segments, and they have wings and lights, and it's all just kind of crazy. I don't know. Whatever's going on seems like a bunch of Scooby-Doo stuff, and it's up to us meddling kids to figure it out. Next up, we see what may be the top of a cathedral or church because we find a humongous bell just ringing away. It has 3 different hammers bashing on the bell in succession. This may be a place where the species is trying to recreate a certain frequency or sound that they find sacred. And speaking of sacred, next up, we find a weird room with a burning blue fire in the middle. Behind it are what looks like giant antlers or something, and an archway with a coffin-like object between them all. On the coffin, there are 3 strange blue symbols, and they are sort of similar to the one we found in the elevator. We find a series of circles on each symbol. Each symbol has more circles than the last, and they are all colliding. These symbols are all chained into the coffin like it'd be dangerous for them to be taken out. The design on the coffin also reminds me of the weird hand totem we found as well. Maybe we are supposed to take these symbols and plug them into the hand totem and other objects we find. But this marks the end of the actual trailer. Luckily, that's not the end of the teasing they did. Editing lore here. I just want to clarify, I don't think that's actually a coffin. Like, it may be, but I doubt it's actually a coffin. It just kind of looks like it, and that's what we dubbed it over on the Discord, so that's what I'm calling it. But back to it. Both on Steam and other media platforms, Mobius and Annapurna have shared a few more tidbits. Here, we see another spooky image. We find ourselves in a pretty well lit room considering the other scenes. The lights are pretty cool too. These are the ones we saw in that spooky house's porch. They have little tree decals on the sides, which I thought looked spooky from a distance, but up close they actually look pretty cool. There are tables with bottles, glasses, and lanterns on them. It seems like a normal civilization just kicking it here. Those wooden divider things have a cool design them on the wall, and we can see them in the background. And if you are observant, you can find a new instrument sitting in the corner. Maybe we will get lucky and they'll allow us to take these and we can take them with us and we can join the Outer Wild adventures properly at the end of the game. But just outside the door is a small wooden bridge leading to a very spooky tree. Underneath the tree looks pretty hollow. We might be able to actually enter it and go inside that thing. It looks pretty cool. But the last thing we get is a pretty cool GIF. This scene is actually a well-lit scene, so wherever this place is may have a surface this bright, or maybe they artificially did this somehow, but it's a GIF of us zooming in with our signal scope to get a better view of a nearby building. On the front of the shack looks to be a design or symbol for what looks like a submarine. It has fins in the back and a thing sticking up like a periscope, and it's like round and bulbous and like glass in the front. The shack seems pretty beat up, but we can see something scattered on the side of the building. This is definitely ghost matter. We can also see it on the ground surrounding the building as we zoom in. It may surround the whole thing, which is why we have to zoom in to see it. But who knows? It'll be interesting to see how they justify ghost matter being here on this, what's supposed to be a far out distant planet, but admittedly it does come in if it passes in front of the sun like that. But it's highly unlikely that this anomaly was nearby when the interloper exploded, because I'm pretty sure the Nomai wouldn't let something like that slip past them. But I guess if they're making it so the Harthians, newly discovered this thing in retrospect, then maybe they can make it so the Harthians did too. We'll have to see. Someone on the Discord told me that the developers have sort of tried to make this DLC a microcosm of the entire game, all wrapped up into one final adventure. And the way that the developers have worded all of this makes me think that this will be the last we see of the Outer Wilds universe. They mentioned how this was the one and only Outer Wilds DLC they will be making, and how this is the one final adventure in the Outer Wilds system. And some of the descriptions of the game mention how this will be a puzzle to uncover the deepest secrets of the Outer Wilds solar system. It all just seems so final to me with the wording and just how it's all presented, but I hope they make a spiritual successor of some kind for their next project. One thing I see people sort of confused about is how they mention Dark Bramble in the description of the DLC on Steam. But I think this is just actually under the Mysteries of the Solar System portion, which is just sort of the description of the entire game. But I don't think it has anything to do with the DLC specifically, although I could be wrong. As of now, I'm just super excited to get my hands on Echoes of the Eye and dive deep into some puzzles and lore. And we don't even have to wait that long, it's so awesome. Only a few months until September 28th, and we get to play it ourselves. That's about all I really have for you today though, but I hope you enjoyed the breakdown and liked the video. There's so much going on in the trailer, it's crazy. Whatever Eclipse the Sun is a place that we can actually go to and discover things, I mean, that's going to be wild if that's true. And then how did the Harthians know about that to even set up a camera in time? And all of the symbols and the bells and the churches, I mean, it just all looks like it's going to be a full experience. It's going to be fun. So get hyped, folks. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Only 16% of the people who watch these videos are subscribed, and it would really make a huge difference if even half of those people subscribe to the channel. So if you're not subscribed to the channel already, please do. A special thank you to the members here on the channel. I'm thinking about doing gameplay videos when Echoes of the Eye comes out and letting the members see them a day before they release. And as I mentioned before, I'm trying to think of other ways to thank members, so let me know if you have any ideas in the comments. And as always, this is a lore explorer who can't wait to dive into the lore of Echoes of the Eye. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.